Enough slides. Hi, my name is Catherine, and I'm a recovering ideator.
Hi, Catherine.
I'm also the CIO of Megit, and when I hit my innovation trough, fortunately I was able to work with Scott here, and I'm now happy to report that I can innovate one day at a time.
Hi, my name is Scott Jewett, and I'm a recovering ideator.
Hi, Scott.
I'm also the CEO of Element Y, and when I hit bottom, I was saved by this four-step program we're going to talk about today.
Okay, clearly this is not an Ideators Anonymous meeting, and we really are going to talk about the four-step process, which we think is a simple and accessible process to innovation, maybe a little bit of a twist for some of the things that are a little bit more complex about innovation. And to start the dialogue, I want to state what I think is maybe a little bit of the obvious thing. The pursuit of innovation success is not new. I mean, we have been drenched in commercial and corporate innovation approaches, and those have worked very well for some companies. But for other companies, innovation still remains a bit elusive. And, well, I can recall the first ideation session that I was required to attend as a part of a corporate innovation program. And it was facilitated by an outside hired gun who was going to help us find our inner innovator. Yes, you're tracking right with me. We were going to innovate. Yeah, we were. So he decided he wanted to get our creative juices flowing and decided that a good way to do that would be to throw some questions at us and then just have us answer right off the cuff. So the first question was, transport yourself to Base Camp Mount Everest. What's the one innovative thing you want to take to the summit? And I went, oh, me, a taxi. Well, his face just froze. And of course, all my colleagues in the room were looking at me like I'm smoking the drapes. I'm like, what? I am in heels and a skirt. There is no way I am walking up a mountain. So good on the facilitator, though. He did actually manage to crack the ice off of his face long enough to do what he was paid to do and said, that's a great idea. So while he was writing that on the flip chart, a colleague leans over to me and says, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. So you can imagine that it actually really was probably the stupidest thing that he had heard. So we did get on actually to our real challenge in that innovation session, and he gave it to us pretty straight on. He said, okay, come up with good ideas to make the company better. Well, we kind of froze with that. Didn't really know quite what to do with it, to be honest. And I'll cut this short. It was not a productive session at all. I mean, it wasn't productive for a variety of reasons, but not the least of which was that there were no real problems to solve. He was having us boil the ocean, and there was basically not a boundary to be found. So we kind of wallowed around. Now, I will say the one notable outcome of that session was, in fact, the toilet paper suggestion. So one gentleman had noted that every day when he went into the men's restroom that all of the toilet paper rolls were brand new. And he suggested that if the rolls were replaced when they were empty, that the company could save a lot of money on toilet paper. So that's about as good as it got. Well, I actually felt kind of bad when I finished that session because I didn't feel like we did a very good job. And we must not have been the only ones because ultimately that corporate innovation program kind of faded into obscurity and sort of that was that. So today we are really going to talk about the four steps of innovation. I swear it's really true. And to do that, we're going to share some stories, bust some myths, and have a little fun practicing at the end.
Well, I'm pleased to be here, and feel like I've been embraced by your group. It's interesting because what I get involved in is innovation on a daily basis, and I'm seeing CIOs becoming the center of that. It's really amazing to me, and it's just rapidly and recently happened in the industry, that the CEOs are starting to be the center of the innovation process. And as Catherine alluded to, I'm a student of innovation. I feel like I'm constantly learning what's working, what's not. We're working with some of the biggest companies and organizations in the world. And so if any of you have time today and you see me, if you've got some ideas or things that you see that are working, I'm anxious to hear from you and talk to you about what's working in your industries. So we've, as students of innovation, have seen those companies that do it well and those that don't. And it also struck me today, I was listening to Vic and Bill and Rich do their presentations. And once again, I applaud your industry because I heard them talking about extraordinary innovations that they're doing and yet asking for more and pushing their companies to go further. So we see that desire for innovation. We also see sometimes those companies that struggle with it. For example, one company that I've worked with spent a lot of money on their innovation infrastructure, and they set up an innovation lab, and they said that they wanted a material amount of their employees' time to be spent on innovations of their very own thinking, and yet they struggle with it. And so they're spending all this money on this innovative infrastructure instead of what's really important, which is innovation is a structured way of thinking that's going to deliver great results. So what Catherine and I want to have you leave this with is to think of innovation in a different way, embrace this new way of thinking, or come along with this ride. And it may not work for you, but for me, it's been a career changer to innovate in a different way. And so we want to change your relationship with innovation today. So first thing I want to do is talk to you about what this process is that we talked about earlier. Basically, we've boiled innovation down. And you know, I was on an airplane last night coming in from Houston, and I pulled out a Fast Company magazine, and it was talking about Google. We heard the conversations about Google today and how innovative they've been, and they identified a 4-step process, or a 5-step process to innovation. So the idea of setting a process in place is starting to catch on. So what we've done is we've identified this 4-step process for innovation. That first step is to define the problem essence. And by the way, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, we want you to remember this process, because I think it's magical. Define the essence of the problem, then embrace your constraints, and you need to do those two in order before you get to step 3, which is to generate, quick test, and then select ideas. And at this point, it becomes iterative. This is where you loop back and you test it against, hey, does this fit the essence of our innovation? Does this comply with the constraints we have here? And once you've done that, you get this subset of ideas. Now it's time to go on to execution. So what we're going to do today is tell you a couple quick stories about innovation in practice, and then we're going to go back to this and drill it out in more detail, and then, as Catherine said, have some fun with it at the end.
So I'm going to tell a story that's really sort of in the corporate pocket. I think some of you may actually resonate with the challenge that I was trying to go after. When I'm done, Scott's going to tell a story that's just a little bit different. So the challenge that I was facing was communications in my MIS organization. And we have 47 companies around the world, and I have staff that are 6 feet out my door, 6,000 miles in either direction, and everything in between. And you can imagine that when you're receiving the feedback that we want more communication, you start to feel a little stuck. Like I could spend my entire job trying to communicate, and I would never get my job done. So a little bit of a challenge there. So that sort of had been hanging over me for a while. Aside from that, I was out at a business unit, and some of you may be familiar with the term Gemba walk. It's from a continuous improvement methodology. It comes from the Hoshin-Connery theory on continuous improvement. And Gemba in Japanese means the actual place. And a Gemba walk is a way to get leaders out of their offices and into where things are actually happening, and it's meant to be a communication methodology that supports continuous improvement. So I was out at this business unit, and the president of the unit was about to take his Gemba walk, and he asked if I'd like to join him. I was like, oh man, I'm down with that, yeah, for sure. So I walked along with him and just observed and listened, And it was really fascinating. As we went through the office space and then down on the plant floor, there was just this incredibly smooth flow of information. Now, most of it was about work, but there was a lot of it that also wasn't about work. And I found myself just very intrigued by this process and how he just sort of seamlessly just wove through his organization. When we got back to his office, he said, well, that was my Gemba walk. That's how I connect. Fast forward, I'm back in my office, and I'm pondering life, liberty, and the pursuit of communication happiness in my organization. And it's been quite a bit of time since I was on that Gemba walk, and I was really feeling kind of stuck. So because my brain wasn't really helping me at that point in time, I decided to do something that I like to do, which is I went to my observation list. Now, I have learned over the years the value of collecting observations. If something strikes me either positively or negatively, I write it down. I actually have a file called Observations. So I was looking for something that was going to help spark my thought process on how to be a little bit creative about solving a big, broad, worldwide communication problem with my team. And I'm going down, and I see Gemba walk. And I went, Gemba walk, that's it. Not. I live in a global organization. I cannot exactly go have walks with all my team members. I would be on airplanes for the rest of my life, and that was not going to work. So I was kind of stuck again. I was in the doldrums and going, oh, I want Gemba walks. I want Gemba walks. So I went to a set of techniques that I use when, again, my brain isn't helping me. I try to get my brain to help itself by using some sort of thought process stimulators, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit. So one of the techniques I love to use is deconstruction. So I went, I wonder if I could take Gemba walk and pull it apart and see what would happen. So I did. I had Gemba and I had walk. And what became immediately clear to me is that I wanted the Gemba. I wanted the connection and the communication aspect of that experience. What also became immediately clear to me is that I would be completely happy to have virtual walks via a phone call. So that is how the Gemba chat was born in my organization. So my administrative assistant basically implemented it, and she scheduled meetings on my calendar with at least 2 members of my staff each week, and these are the coolest calls. So I get on the call, it's just one-on-one, and that person is allowed to take me on a walk. And they walk me through whatever they want, and the communication has been really cool because it's also a connection. And a kind of magical thing has happened, which is I am actually getting to know my staff in ways that I didn't ever think that I would. But the coolest thing was on our last Great Place to Work survey in the communication section. The outstanding positive comments were about the Gemba chats. So that's a way to take this very simple process. I mentioned a couple of the things that I went through here. And apply it very individually. And that's the key to innovation, which is innovation does not have to be about a giant, great big problem. It can be, but it also can be something that you individually need to kind of tackle. And this is a very straightforward way to do it. And for me, it worked extraordinarily well. Now, Scott is going to talk about a different kind of problem. And I'm just going to start it off by saying one day he had a really interesting phone call.
Well, that's an understatement. I'm going to guess you all remember what you were doing when 9/11 happened. And I'm going to talk to you about my experience around that. And this was very humbling for me because I was honored to be involved in this. I know exactly where I was. I was driving on the 405 freeway at the Culver exit. It was 6:47. I'm listening to my radio on my way to work. And it hits the radio waves. And the first thing I did was called my wife and I woke her up. And she turned on the television and she's describing for me what's happening as 9/11 is unfolding. And about 2 or 3 minutes in describing it, she just went silent for a minute and she said, I feel sick to my stomach. And that's when my business life changed. And I kind of went on my own Gemba walk after that. A few days later, I'm in my office, and my company had done some work in anti-terrorist type of products, and I got a call. Hi, this is Greg from the Department of Defense. We need the Pentagon fixed, and nobody knows how to do it. And at that moment, I just kind of felt like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Because we really don't have an answer for them. But a few days later, they asked me to survey the damage. And so I'm walking through the Pentagon walls with Greg. And if you've ever been there, it's an amazing building. It's the world's largest office building, believe it or not. It was built in the 40s, and there's these long, skinny hallways that you walk through, and it's all Pentagon-shaped, believe it or not. It's all the same on all sides, but we're walking down this hallway, and they're telling me, we need a solution for this problem. We need these walls stronger. And we turn a corner, and the floor just dropped off in a jagged edge. And Greg told me that one of the people he worked with they were still trying to find his body. And I don't know, the thing I seem to remember, and I can't even think of how to compare it to something, but the smell this burning smell was just awful. Anyways, all we kept hearing is, we need these walls stronger, we need them thicker. And the traditional way to do this is where we started to look at what's the essence of the problem. The traditional way to do this is, 3 or 4 foot thick, reinforced cement, reinforced with steel, cement walls. Well, this is a historic 5-story building. The structure wouldn't hold that weight. There was no room. And so, again, what do we do about this? So what we did was looked at it and said, well, what's the real problem? What's the essence of the problem here? Is it that the walls aren't thick enough? Or is it that people are dying when there's a blast? And so we set out to find out what is killing people in the blast of a building, and did some research. And there was some studies done by the Air Force Research Laboratory on what happens in a blast. And believe it or not, 80% of the death and damage in a blast comes from fragments from the building itself, flying at high speeds. It's not the blast, it's the building. And in some ways, adding more building makes the problem worse. So now we had the essence of the problem. It's people are dying, and it's not that the walls aren't thick enough, it's that the debris is flying. And we came up with I think, a pretty innovative idea. What about, we can't use cement, what about a rubber curtain? Right? Like a trampoline turned up on its edge. That'll catch the debris. Everybody said, great idea. But what about a fire that comes with a blast? We said, well, rubber burns. There is no inflammable rubber. So once again, we're given a problem, or what they thought was the problem, and we wanted to get to the essence of the problem. Was it that the rubber burns, or is it the fire? And when we looked at it as the fire, not the rubber, said, well, what if we robbed the rubber or the fire of oxygen? So we came up with a coating that kind of fluffed up in a fire, sort of like a roasted marshmallow, and kept oxygen away from the rubber wall. And so that process allowed us to work with a pretty, talk about constraints. We had, budgets. Try driving, truckloads of liquid rubber into the Pentagon building after 9/11, right? So there was all these constraints of budget and timing. They wanted this building reopened on the anniversary of 9/11. And 9 months later, we had completed the job on budget, did the entire building, and talk about proud, because nobody had been able to solve this, and my team was able to go in there and get it done. And on the last couple days I was there, I had the honor of, right where the airplane hit the building, they built a memorial, and I got to walk in before it was open to public and see the names etched on the wall. We were just finishing up, and I don't know, you ever have those times in life where you feel like sad and happy at the same time, or proud, and it was one of those moments. And they're plastering over the last wall, and all I could think to do, I got one of my business cards out, and I pasted it inside the wall as they closed it up. And I don't know, I just wanted to be there forever. So.
Stay up here with me now. So this is obviously not the first time that I've heard this story, but every time I hear it, it does move me. But I think the other thing that is really striking is that Scott mentioned some of the aspects of this four-step process, and that a very simple process can actually drive quite extraordinary results. So we do want to take some time now and actually talk in a little bit more detail about the process. So I want to start off the discussion with a little bit of thinking about who we engage in the innovation process. So when you look at your teams in general, for the purposes of innovation, there are generally two types of thinkers. There are the idea generators, and we all know who those folks are, and they're great. And there are our straight line linear thinkers, and we all know who they are, and they're great. Now, for the purpose of innovation, it's usually the innovators or the idea generators that really want to get involved. And the good news is that they really want to get involved. The challenging news is that keeping those idea generators pinned down into reality can really be a challenge from time to time. So, Scott, you are a challenge to yourself. So fess up and tell us what kind of thinker you are.
Yeah, I'm definitely a nonlinear thinker. And you know, I'm the idea guy, and I spin off in other directions. And you've probably all had to manage people like that, and that can be a challenge, right? We don't tend to follow process very well. And so for me, I've had to try to ground myself in a process or something that gives me some structure to my thinking. And so that's why this four-step process that we've observed from successfully innovative companies as kind of students of innovation has really saved me from being that pain in the butt person that you can't pin down. I'm like Jello to a wall. So that leads me to, let's talk about that process a little bit further, because this is really important in the way that we innovate. And so what we want to do now is take these four steps and talk about them in more detail. And the first step is to define the problem essence. So, Catherine, what's important about that?
Yeah, this is extraordinarily important, and I would say is perhaps the most important thing you can do when starting the innovation process. So the thing that is important, I would say, is to remember that a good problem statement is about an outcome that you want or need, and not about how you are going to get it. And the reason I bring this up is that in IT, we often have our customers come to us with a problem that sounds something like, my problem is that I don't have this software, right? You've heard that before. And so because we're good IT people, we always go, well, perhaps we could talk about your requirements first before we actually talk about software. But I think we actually even need to take it further than that, which is, why are these requirements so important? What's going on, and why are these requirements even around? And really dig down to find out and make sure that we are talking about doing the right thing. So when we have a problem that sounds curiously like a solution, we call that the reciprocal problem statement. And Scott, you have the perfect example of the reciprocal problem statement.
Yeah, this is, from my experience, defining the essence of the problem is where it's most oftenly there's a mistake made or there's a misunderstanding. The Pentagon project was a perfect example. The Department of Defense says, our problem is that the walls aren't thick enough. And as you mentioned, that's a reciprocal of a solution, right? Making the walls thicker then becomes the solution. So be careful of this. This is where people often break down in trying to follow, because when you define it as a solution, you limit your thinking. And so the exercise here is to say, okay, is there an embedded solution in what they're telling me the problem is, or what I'm hearing the problem is? And another way to evaluate this is to say, can I think of other alternatives to what they just told me? Oh, the walls aren't thick enough. They're not strong enough. They're not wide enough. Now that tells me, okay, now we've got an embedded solution rather than the essence of the problem. And only when we get to that point of understanding that essence of that problem do we go to that next step, which is to embrace the constraints. And we chose those words carefully, to embrace the constraints. Catherine, what is it about embracing constraints that's relevant here to the conversation?
Well, I would actually say that embracing constraints is the most important step in innovation, and I know I just told you that defining the essence of the problem was the most important step in innovation, and so that is because the two go hand in hand, and they really need to be done together. So between them, they are the most important step of innovation. So in embracing constraints, what's important about this is ensuring that you are being honest about it. I mean, we live in a world of constraints, whether it's budget, whether it's time, whether it's culture. It could be a variety of things, but you really do need to be honest about what your constraints are. So my suggestion is write them down. Assign a magnitude of how they're going to impact what it is that you're attempting to do. And then identify which one of those are maybe a little bit fungible and which of those are absolutely immovable objects. And if it's immovable, don't waste your time trying to move it. Getting constraints defined accurately is very important for two reasons. One is it forms the basis of quick testing, which is in the step to come. If you're taking a potential solution and you're throwing it at constraints and those constraints aren't accurately defined, you're probably going to have a challenge with your solution. The other is that it's about expectation setting. You may have customers that are expecting some really cool whiz-bang solution that you're going to come up with, but if you can go out and say, we are proposing this solution, and it's within the constraint of X and also the constraint of Y. We would have loved to have considered other solutions, but we're working within our constraints. It's a great expectation setter. So Scott, you have constraints in everything that you do with innovation, so what's important that you've found?
You know, it's human nature to want to run from them, avoid them, and you know, what I hope that you'll get out of this is to love them and to embrace them, because what is amazing is when you embrace those constraints, they become your solution. They're inseparable from the process, and by virtue of definition, they're probably something you can't avoid completely or get rid of. So we really think that this step is one of setting the mind that, hey, these are the constraints in place, and by embracing them, and only once you embrace them can you go into that next step and start generating ideas, which is the fun part, right, of thinking of ways to solve the problem. So Catherine, tell them about kind of quick testing and generating ideas and how that works.
Yeah, so what's interesting to me is I have found over the years that innovation and ideas can become somewhat synonymous, that innovation is thought of as an idea. And if I could leave you with a message today, I would like to just say that innovation is not an idea. It's a great outcome from an idea that is in harmony with steps 1 and 2. And when we think about the folks that we're engaging in innovation, especially those really cool idea generators who can just basically fly off the walls, keeping them pinned in, and not in a bad way, but keeping them grounded with steps 1 and 2 can make a very productive kind of experience for them. So idea generating is something that is sometimes serendipitous and sometimes frustrating. And sometimes we actually hit the wall, right? We have the doldrums, we have writer's block, there is nothing. So what do we do when that happens? Well, what I would suggest is make a formal effort to try to make your brain do something different than what it typically wants to do. I use this list. It actually doesn't look like this in the Word document that I have on my laptop, but these are a set of techniques that are basically great to use to get your brain just to think of something a little bit differently. The first one is observing, and I told you that I'm an observation collector. I have learned over the years that writing things down is really, really helpful because you can go back at it. When I wrote down Gemba Walk, I did not know that I would stumble on that a few months later, and actually it would become something very helpful in my organization. So write things down. And write down why you thought they were cool. You may not use it just then, but it may come in, and when you're looking for some stimulation, you may find something on your observation list that's helpful for you. Deconstruction, one of my personal favorites. Sometimes looking at things not in totality, but looking at them in a parsed way. Hey, go back. Never mind. Oh, wrong way. No, don't look at that. Okay, be careful with this thing. Looking at things not in totality but in a parsed way can make you look at things differently. That's what happened when I looked at Gemba and Walk separately. I love deconstructing. I'll deconstruct just about anything. Correlating. Now, correlating is about cause and effect, right? So this often may be associated with a way to look at your problem. So if you can find some other problem that maybe you were involved in solving or somebody else was involved in solving that had sort of that same cause and effect relative to what the problem was, and then ask, well, how was that solved? Maybe that can spark some ideas in how you think about your problem and how it could be solved. Paralleling is just exactly that. There may be somebody who ultimately has or is working on a challenge just like yours. And reaching out into your network for correlations and for parallels is a great thing to do. Now, for us old folks, you know how we do this? Here you go. Oh, hey, Jim. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, can I pick your brain for a minute about that thing? That's how the old folks do it, right? Last night, for those of you who were watching the presentation on the millennials, here's how the millennials do it. I have 27 responses. That's how they do it, right? They'll reach out and find you correlations and parallels in a heartbeat. Now, getting through those and sifting through them, okay, a whole different part of the process, but nonetheless, 2 words for millennials and this process: watch out. Imaging. I don't typically think in pictures. When Scott and I work together, he starts to draw stuff and I start to write. But when I do have to force myself to look at something as an image and I try to create something more of a picture as opposed to a description, it really shifts my brain. My brain doesn't necessarily want to go there, but when I make it go there, it can often be a great process to help just create ideas. The last is abstraction, and this is really kind of, moving yourself away from the concrete reality of what it is, changing the texture, the context, the setting, whatever it may be, to create some sort of abstract view of your problem. This one can be very interesting. It's not an LSD trip, but you will go sort of out of the norms. It's crazy things like, if I were trying to solve this problem, but I worked on a farm, how would that be different? It's really kind of getting away from your concrete reality. Now, a word to the wise on your idea generators and this concept of abstracting. Lots of fun. This is where you get to go play with all kinds of crazy ideas. Make sure they come back, right? We do have to actually get them back into reality. Okay, so before I hand this back over to Scott, I just want to tell you about a proactive innovation thing that I'm going to do that's a result of observing and that I'm about to deconstruct. So a couple of weeks ago, I was in London Heathrow Airport renting a car from Enterprise Rental Car. Now, for years, I've been doing this, just about every other month, but renting from another company. And our corporate preferred partner changed, and so there I was in the rental car office of Enterprise. It was the most phenomenal customer service I have ever experienced. I never would have thought I would say that a car rental agency was going to be sort of the epiphany for customer service for me. So if there's anybody in here from Enterprise Car Rental, high five. Okay, so that obviously caught my attention. As soon as I got to my hotel, I opened up my observation files and wrote in there and went, Enterprise Car Rental, London Heathrow, customer service, wow. Now, what I can't wait to do, and you guys will be interested in this, is take that and deconstruct it into all of the pieces and parts of that experience and find out what was so good about that. And then I want to take that and see if I can take those pieces and parts and with my leaders, think about how we can do something innovative with a car rental model that could make our customer service model even better. So, Scott, idea generating, you do this all the time. Writer's block from time to time?
Yeah, I get innovator's block a lot, and this is a good example of being a student of innovation. This is something Catherine taught me in the process of preparing for this, and I think it's brilliant to be able to have these ways of thinking for us to teach our innovators so that they can break through and come up with things. And sometimes it takes time. This is sometimes 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration, and people will implant those essence of the problem and the embracing of the constraints, and then when they're taking a shower or out to dinner or something, an idea might spark. But once those ideas have sparked, the next thing we want to do is execute, right? That's what you're all about, is going out and executing. So Catherine, tell them about execution, and then we'll talk some more about the process.
Yeah, I'm not going to say an awful lot about execution because you wouldn't be in this room unless you were really already very good at it. I would just offer up one helpful hint perhaps, which is to consider your culture when you are taking an innovative solution up the food chain or introducing it into your organization. Some companies are very receptive to ideas that don't look like the average bear. Some companies not as much. So think about what your culture is and what paths you may need to pave to try to come to a place where this isn't going to be some crazy surprise. The worst case scenario is that there you are with the person who has the pen and is going to sign that capital request for this great innovative solution that you have, and their eyebrows are raised so far that the pen is frozen, right? So check out your organization, just do a sense check on that, and consider the concept of path paving as you go along. Okay, so that is the four-step process, complete with a list of things that you can do to spark your thought processes when your brain doesn't feel like sparking on its own. And the next part of this discussion, really kind of want to talk about some of the traditional rules of innovation, because I can understand that while we're standing here talking to you about innovation being a process, some of you might be struggling with it. I mean, I certainly did when I started to think of it this way, because it was very contrary to some of the things that I had learned over time in terms of innovation approaches and so forth. So Scott, I thought it'd be fun to just get some of your perspectives on some of the traditional rules of innovation. You game?
Sounds great.
Okay, so traditional rule number one, structure kills creativity.
Yeah, this one's counterintuitive. You know, if you put a structure in place, that it kills innovation. And I learned a really neat lesson on this from a friend of mine who teaches CEOs how to be creative and innovative. Michael Alasso is a former stage actor and director. Creative, right? That's what you think of when you think of creative. But what Michael taught me is that the best actors, the best stage actors, they know everything. They know where they're going to land on the stage. They know every part of their script. They know where all the props are. They know what the other actors are doing. And they are so practiced that when they're going through a scene and somebody accidentally drops a pen on the floor in the middle of the scene that was unexpected, the actor can go over, pick it up, make it part of the scene. So the irony is that actually that structure frees creativity, doesn't hinder it.
Okay, traditional rule number two, all ideas are good ideas.
There are no bad ideas?
There are no bad ideas.
Yeah, this is a busted myth too, right? And I know why we all say that, because we want everybody to feel warm and fuzzy about freeing their minds and saying whatever they think of. But the key here is to do it in a way that's productive to people. Use this process. Go back to the essence of the innovation. Look at your constraints and define it as a bad idea. You know, a cab to the top of Mount Everest,
Hey.
bad idea. Right? An employee that comes to you and says, I've got a $5 million solution to a $2 million problem.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. So there are bad ideas. The key here is eliminate them early so you don't spend a lot of time and resources on them. And I don't like the concept of saying there are no bad ideas. I think that sets the wrong tone. So myth busted again.
Okay, traditional rule number three, innovation is all about good ideas.
Yeah, semi-busted. It is about good ideas, but as we talked about today, it's about a structured way of thinking that's going to deliver those great results, and then having you all do what you do best, which is execute on those and get them out and get them to be productive for your companies. So, and like any process, this requires that you just go out and try it, see if it works for you. It works for me, and you may find some iteration of this that you're more comfortable with. But what we want you to do now is go out there and try it, but we want to practice a little bit, right? Because when we practice it, we do it. So this is the part where we want you to have some fun and interact with this presentation.
Okay, well, you heard the man. We're going to practice. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually show you a video clip, and then we'll give you your instructions for your innovation challenge, and it's all in fun, so don't stress, after the video clip. Now, you're going to recognize this video clip. It's from one of the best movies in the world, and you're going to recognize the character of Indiana Jones. However, The guy we want you to pay attention to is the guy with the sword, because your innovation challenge is going to be all about the guy with the sword. Okay, JB. Okay, so Indiana Jones, not terribly innovative. He just pulled out the gun and shot the guy. And sometimes that's what you have to do. You just got to get done what you need to get done. But what if we were able to rewrite this script? What if Sword Guy, just as he was about to get ready to demonstrate all of his fancy-dancy sword swinging skills, saw that Indiana Jones had a gun and decided, instead of showing off his fancy-dancy sword swinging skills, to think about the fact that Indiana Jones had a gun. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to break up into pairs, 2 people working together, and you're going to very quickly go through the 4 steps. So you're going to define Sword Guy's problem, the essence of his problem, jot down a couple constraints, don't get too wrapped up in it, generate a couple solutions and pick the one that you like, and then maybe a sentence on how you'd actually execute that. And there will be prizes. Scott, will there not?
Yes, that's why you're going to want to do this, because we are giving you prizes. And those prizes will be selected on audience applause. And here's what the goal is. The most entertaining solution wins the prize. So we want you to all have fun with this and be creative. And we're expecting some really entertaining solutions to the swordsman's problem. And we're going to wander around and try to see if we can help. Okay?
Okay.
So go to it. You have 5 minutes. I'm expecting a lot from you guys. Well, if you sit up front, you have to have the best one. All right? They're good prizes, so make it creative and entertaining. You define the constraints. You're the script writer. And it's got to be very creative. Yeah, we're going to ask 3 of them to volunteer to come on the stage, and we'll just have applause for the best one, and then we're done.
I thought maybe we were just going to have them stand up and just say it right on the spot.
No.
So you could have
No, we're going to have
We're just going to have a couple up there.
three groups
Okay.
come
Do you
up.
need a mic with them? Do they need a mic with them to speak up there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do I need to turn it on, or is it?
It's on.
Okay.
FYI, your mic is on,
Okay.
but you're,
I'm not supposed to touch it.
I know, but wait, I just,
You better be good.
yeah?
Are you having
I am.
innovator's
We can't-
block?
We're not allowed to touch them.
As long as it's entertaining, you're going to want the prize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, kick it out. Yeah.
See, I like that.
I don't know how long these take.
Can you make it a little more entertaining?
10 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be, they only have about 2 more minutes left, and then we're going to get them up on stage, give them prizes, and we'll have a few minutes for
Was it kind of ad lib? I think. I didn't know that. And it's such a classic, isn't it? Yeah, it's a classic scene. Well, I think you're on something. I think you should volunteer.
While you were giving out the intro. So rewrite, the problem is?
Define the problem, essence of problem. We want the most creative answer you can get that the crowd is going to like the best. Okay? As the script writer. Okay? Then you only got a few minutes.
Okay, right.
Okay, so entertaining.
Just make sure clearly writing the script.
Cute you are. Correct. And all you're going to do is go up, if you volunteer, and say what your solution is, and we'll see who applauds for it. Okay, let's do it. We okay on time? Why don't you MC this part?
What's that?
Why don't you MC this part?
Okay.
And I'll go out and point to people that come up or whatever.
Okay. Oh, we're not on. Can we get mic volume?
Is your mic on?
I need my mic up.
Mics, please.
I don't think they can hear us.
Lead.
There we go. Okay. Okay, your 5 minutes is up. All right. We are looking for 3 groups of 2 to come up on stage and very quickly share their incredibly fun solutions to Sword Guy's problems. So, volunteers, 3 groups.
Come on.
Come on.
Raise your hand, somebody. Come on.
All right, there
up.
we go. We got a team,
Come
number 1. Okay, team number 2.
Come on up.
Team number
3.
2.
Come on up.
Who do we got? We got all 3. All right, great. Where's your other team member? Oh, he's coming. Okay, let's go. All right.
Here's the mic for them to use for saying what they have.
Come on up. Come on up.
Are you going to win? Oh. Nice to meet you.
Okay, you guys can just stand right there, and we'll start. Here you can line up, and right here. So we have Bobby and we have Bill. Okay, so Bobby, B and B. There you go. What was? Are you doing the talking here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
What
I'll
was
describe it.
the essence of your problem?
Essence of the problem is that the sword guy wants to stop Indy, and also doesn't want to die.
Okay, doesn't want to die. Okay, and what were your constraints?
Constraints were that his weapon was overpowered,
Okay.
and also that he can't back down. Like he can't just run away.
He can't.
As a constraint.
Win. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you come up with a good idea?
So we did 3 ideas, right? And then
Okay.
to do the quick test, we just ran through what would happen with each scenario.
Cool.
And so one was grab a person as a shield or different people, then try to use them as a shield, and then eventually get to him and kill him. So that was one. Another one was just kind of at least don't stand there, but just kind of try to evade it or maybe move around more or something like that, so he less chance of getting shot. Or just run away, so then that one was cut out because it didn't meet the criteria. And then another one was for him to come out and then see the gun and then say, hey, you know what? And just act like he's like an ally. Like, hey, come on, I'm going to help you. Hey, come this way, And then and then stab him back, like literally.
Okay. And which one did you pick?
The last one.
The last one. Awesome. Okay, the ally team. The ally team. Okay. All right. Who's going to be doing the talking? We have Jody and we have Beth. Okay. So what was the essence of the problem?
So very similar to what you guys said. We weren't trying to kill the guy. We're just trying to stop him. And I'm sorry. That's it.
Okay. And constraints?
So constraints to us was life, because that's first and foremost. Weapon and distance, because a sword doesn't have a very good range and a gun's got a pretty awesome one.
Good point. Okay. And creative solution, which one did you pick?
So we tested a couple other ones, like running, for example, just befriending the guy. But then we thought, what's contagious? You want to stop somebody, right? You don't just want to involve yourself. You want to involve the entire crowd around you. So how can you do that in a really interesting way? We started to think about, well, maybe he has the wrong weapon. Instead of trying to kill somebody, maybe you try and involve everybody around you. So I don't know if anybody's heard this song before. Nothing is more contagious than that song.
Okay. Team 2, flash mob. Okay. Team 2, flash mob. All right. Okay, and we have here, we've got Herman and we have Eric. Okay, so Herman, you're doing the speaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of reiterate what they were saying. We're trying to figure out what the problem was. We feel that he was outgunned, but then we were worried about, did we just embed a solution? We looked and said, he's trying to stop him. We actually believe we're overachievers. He's trying to kill him. Going to the constraints, he has limited range. He has a sword, and he has a gun and a whip. And that's the only weapon he has at the moment. So we're trying to we did the same thing, run. That wasn't really an option because you don't complete your goal. Diplomacy, there might be language barriers, things like that. Where are we going to find Wonder Woman bracelets or the Neo pill that allows you to dodge bullets? None of those stuff are really going to be working. So what we thought was, where are you? Use your environment. We're at a bazaar. What's at a bazaar? Lots of goods. Typically at a bazaar, we have snakes. So throw a snake. You get him all occupied looking at the snake. Sneak behind like a ninja. Accomplish the mission.
Okay. Team number 3, the snake diversion team. Okay. So for reviewing here, we have team number 1, who was the ally team, form an alliance. Team number 2, flash mob. And team number 3, the snake diversion. Okay, by round of applause, team number 1. Team number 2. Oh. And team number 3. Okay, well, you know what? We model our innovation challenges after AYSO. So actually, everybody gets a prize. So what do we have for our winners, Johnny?
I don't know what it is. I saved the Swordman whiteboards.
So your very own personal whiteboard to write your innovative ideas on. So there you go. Thank you, guys. Very fun. Thanks for playing. It was great. A couple more. Wait. They didn't get their prizes.
Oh, they didn't get their prize?
Scott, hey girls, wait. Scott didn't play AYSO.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
I'm sorry. There you go. I was trying to innovate a way for me to keep them.
Hi, it's Catherine again.
Hi, Catherine.
I just would really like to thank you for coming to our meeting, and we hope that you can find innovation healing through our simple and accessible process. No, seriously, Scott and I would we really do appreciate you coming in today and playing along. We do hope that this process is something that you feel like you can just put in your pocket. The concept here really is to have innovation to take with you that is really readily accessible. So I recognize that we're out of time, very unfortunately, so I think that in lieu of questions, we had the challenge, and we hope that that was okay. So thank you again very much for attending.